That day, on my way home, after celebrating my mom's birthday at her house, I ran into traffic. My mom lives far away, and I don't get to visit her often. It was just after 4 p.m., and I had been stuck motionless on that heavily congested road for more than 20 minutes. GPS indicated there was an accident ahead and suggested I take a detour. Well, taking the detour seemed better than staying stuck here, so I decided to switch routes. The GPS quickly recalculated a new way home. The new route was a country road, and I drove along farmland for about 10 minutes. I couldn't see the end of the road, but at least the car could move smoothly, and the rural scenery around was quite pleasant. But not long after, the dashboard showed that my fuel was low. I sighed, one bad thing after another. Just then I spotted a sign for a town on the right. With no other option, I had to head into town to find a place to refuel, so I followed the road signs. To my surprise, it was quite a desolate town. On the outskirts, there was a small gas station, a post office nearby, and a few simple houses along the road. The sun was already starting to set as I pulled into the gas station. I got out to refuel, but the pump had a sign saying I needed to pay inside first. So I walked into the shop and made eye contact with a man behind the counter. I nodded to him, but he ignored me. I went straight to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, then placed it on the counter and told the clerk I wanted the water and to refuel at pump 20 outside. He still didn't acknowledge me, just stared at me for a while before finally squeezing out a reluctant smile and nodding. He pressed a few buttons on the register, then returned to his motionless state. I asked him how much I owed, but he didn't reply, staying silent like a statue. I wasn't in the mood to argue, so I left 200 yuan on the counter and went out to fuel up my car. That's when I noticed an even stranger woman standing in the middle of the road. I curiously watched her as I finished fueling up, and then walked over to see why she was standing there. I asked her, "Are you okay?" She replied, "I'm fine. Everyone here is very happy." I felt confused, but since my car was filled up, I figured it was time to head back on the road and leave the town. As I continued driving, more and more things around me started to feel off. There were 4 people queuing outside the post office. As far as I knew, post offices don't stay open this late. So why were they still standing in line? In front of another house, a man was tidying up the lawn. At first glance, it seemed normal, but the ground was spotless, without a single leaf. It didn't need cleaning at all. Then, there was a house with a small seesaw out front. 2 kids were sitting on it, but instead of going up and down like you'd expect on a seesaw, they just sat there, perfectly balanced, staring at each other without moving. All these eerie, strange scenes made me press harder on the gas, desperate to leave this bizarre town as soon as possible. But before long, sirens and flashing lights in my rearview mirror forced me to pull over. I sighed in frustration as a police officer slowly walked up to my car window. I rolled it down and asked, "What's the problem?" The officer coldly said, "You have the right to remain silent." Confused, I asked, "Am I being arrested? I haven't done anything." The officer replied again, "Sir, driving in this town is illegal," then leaned down so far his head nearly entered my car and said, "Have a pleasant trip." His words made no sense, leaving me baffled. As I took a moment to calm myself down and looked around, I realized that all the people I had seen earlier were now staring intently at my car. The man cleaning the lawn, the 2 kids on the seesaw, the people queuing at the post office. They were all watching me. Even the woman who had been standing in the middle of the road was still there, standing in the center of the street ahead of me. As I stared in disbelief, she spoke again, but this time in a deep, raspy voice that didn't seem to belong to her. "Join us." That's when I slammed on the gas pedal with all my strength, the tires screeching against the pavement as I finally sped away from that strange and eerie town. Once I got home, I felt relieved. Thinking back on those strange people, they looked human, but their behavior wasn't human at all. They were more like mechanical puppets. I know this all sounds unbelievable, and I'm just as confused as anyone. I'm not entirely sure if they were normal people. Next year for my mom's birthday, I think I'll just send her a card. I'm not going back to that place again. It was a science lecture on emergency safety. The instructor brought out a life-sized human model with a face made of rubber that had a wavy smile plastered on it. The exaggerated, comical expression on the model's face made everyone burst out laughing, and the class began to chatter. The teacher, feeling both embarrassed and slightly angry, said, "I know this model doesn't look exactly like a real person, but let's stay focused. I'm about to use this model to show you the terrible safety issues that can happen if we don't follow the rules." As soon as he finished speaking, a student behind me named Brandon laughed even more wildly, saying boldly, "This is too funny. What can a dummy like this possibly teach us?" Other students quietly murmured in agreement, laughing under their breath, but the teacher didn't find it funny at all. He grabbed a ruler and slammed it hard on the front desk, shouting angrily, "If you are all as arrogant, frivolous, and self-centered as Brandon, when real danger comes, you'll realize just how foolish and ignorant you've been." Brandon kept laughing, but the teacher was shaking with anger, his face turning red. Just as he was about to yell again, the classroom loudspeaker announced, "This is a drill. Please evacuate in an orderly manner." A smug smile flashed across the teacher's face, as if he had been given the perfect chance to teach these unruly students a lesson. He said, "Everyone, cooperate with the drill and move to the science building. As for you, Brandon, you'll stay here and write the student code of conduct 10 times. Brandon's laughter now had a trace of fear, though he tried to maintain his composure. We started filing out of the classroom one by one, heads down, secretly relieved that only Brandon was being punished. About 5 minutes later, the drill ended, and we all returned to the classroom, eagerly awaiting Brandon's reaction. But what we saw terrified us all. The human model that had been on the podium was now accompanied by a second one, and this new, lifelike figure bore an uncanny resemblance to Brandon. Brandon himself, who had been left behind to write the code, was nowhere to be seen. Confused, we turned to look at the teacher, who had a sinister smile on his face. He ignored our confusion, as if nothing had happened, and said, "Now, open your textbooks to page 42. Let's continue." The two models remained standing in front of the classroom. After school, I overheard the teacher talking to Brandon's parents. He told them that Brandon had acted against the group and wandered off alone during the drill, and was now missing. Naturally, his parents were furious, vowing to sue the teacher and the school. I wanted to rush over and tell them what might have really happened, but when I saw the teacher's sly, malevolent smile, I hesitated. As I was leaving the school, the teacher gave me a meaningful look and said, "Don't ever forget the lesson from today's drill." What did he do to Brandon?